All right, listeners, get ready. We're about to take a deep dive into the world of Proxmox VDI.
Specifically.
Yeah, specifically, we're looking at how to build a system powerful enough to handle a whole school, like 600 students, all using virtual desktops.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? Giving each student their own virtual desktop, accessible from anywhere, that's pretty game-changing. We've got this awesome guide here that outlines the best practices for setting all this up using Proxmox VE.
Oh, very cool. So,
And trust me, this is going to be epic.
yeah, I think the thing that makes Proxmox VDI so exciting, especially for a project like this, is that it's open source.
Right.
And that could be perfect for, aligning with the school's budget,
Yeah.
which is, always a consideration.
Always a
It's
consideration.
always a plus, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I think before we get too far, let's just make sure we're all on the same page here.
Yeah.
What exactly is VDI? Like, why is it so transformative for education?
Well, VDI stands for Virtual Desktop Infrastructure. And basically, instead of each student having, a physical computer,
Right.
they have a virtual one.
Okay.
And this virtual desktop lives on a server somewhere else.
Gotcha.
And they can access it from any device.
Oh.
As long as they have an internet connection, so it's super flexible.
Right.
And for a school, that can mean that every single student has access to the same software, the same resources, no matter where they are,
Right.
no matter what device they're using.
Yeah.
It just creates so much consistency.
Right.
And it really simplifies management for IT.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it just opens up all these possibilities for learning, right?
Yeah, totally. It's like having a super-powered computer lab in the cloud.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
And to do that, to make this happen, I mean, our guide, it lays out some pretty hefty requirements, I got to say. We're talking like 5 servers, each with, get this, 192 cores and 1.5 terabytes of RAM.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is hefty.
Plus, you need a really solid storage solution, something like Ceph, to keep all those virtual desktops, running smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, Ceph is great because it's a distributed storage system.
Right.
Which means it spreads data across multiple devices.
Okay.
So it increases reliability and performance.
Gotcha.
If one storage drive fails, you don't lose everything,
Right, right. That's really important.
So for a school with hundreds of students all accessing files and applications constantly, you need that dependability.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just thinking, creating 600 virtual machines
Oh, yeah.
manually,
Right.
that just sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah. No.
Our guide emphasizes automation, and I am all for anything that saves time and sanity.
Absolutely. You would not want your IT team
Right.
spending weeks, just clicking through menus.
Oh, yeah.
To set up every single VM.
No.
That's where Proxmox's API comes in.
Okay.
So you can use tools like Python scripts
Okay.
or Terraform to automate this whole process.
Right. Okay. So you're saying.
Yeah, imagine you just create a template with
Right.
all the software and settings that you need.
Yep.
And then, there's 600 VMs practically build themselves.
Oh, okay. That sounds much more appealing than the manual approach.
Definitely.
But, with so many students potentially using their virtual desktops all at the same time,
Yeah.
won't that put like a huge strain on the system?
Well, that's why load balancing is so important.
Right.
Proxmox has these built-in high availability features
Okay.
that help to distribute the workload across those 5 servers.
So it's kind of like traffic management for your virtual desktops.
Exactly.
Okay.
So no single server gets overwhelmed and everything runs smoothly.
Even during peak hours when everybody's logging in.
Yeah, even when everyone's trying to log in for class.
Okay. All right. I'm starting to see how this all fits together. We've got the servers, we've got the storage, the automated VM creation, and the load balancing to keep everything running smoothly.
Right.
But how do the students actually access their virtual desktops?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Our guide mentions this thing called the SPICE protocol.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, that name doesn't exactly scream user-friendly.
Yeah, SPICE is it's a secure remote connection protocol,
Right.
but it might require specific software on the student's device.
Okay.
The guide also suggests looking into Apache Guacamole,
Okay.
which provides browser-based access.
Hold on. Browser-based, that sounds much simpler,
Right.
especially for younger students.
Especially, yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine like
Yeah.
students logging into their virtual desktops from Chromebooks,
Yeah.
tablets, or even their phones.
Whoa.
They don't need to install anything.
Right.
And it works seamlessly across all these devices.
Yeah. That's pretty impressive. But, Wouldn't that raise security concerns?
Yeah,
Checking
you don't want students, snooping around each other's virtual desktops.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
No, but Proxmox has he has a really good permission system.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like having a digital lock on each virtual desktop.
Okay.
So the IT admins can control exactly what each student can access and what they can do.
Right.
So it prevents any, unauthorized peeking or tampering.
Okay. All right, that puts my mind at ease. So far, I think we've covered like the foundation for a pretty powerful and secure Proxmox VDI system.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, are there other VDI solutions out there?
There are.
Okay.
Yeah, one notable option is Izard VDI.
Okay.
It's another open source solution.
So it's not just a one-horse race then?
No, not at all.
What are like the key differences we should think about when we're comparing Proxmox and Izard VDI?
Well, Proxmox, it has a larger and more active community. So that means there are more resources, more support, more documentation.
Right.
And, that could be really important for a school
Yeah.
that maybe has a smaller IT team.
Right.
And they might need that extra help troubleshooting.
Right. Right. That makes sense.
But, Izard VDI, it's known for being incredibly user-friendly.
Okay.
So that could be really appealing for schools where, the teachers might be more involved in managing the virtual desktops.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it just depends on your needs.
Exactly, yeah.
That's great. It's great to have options, right?
It is.
Especially when we're talking about a project as impactful as this.
For sure.
And speaking of impactful, the guide mentions a few extra tools that can really enhance the Proxmox VDI experience.
Oh, yeah. You're probably thinking of the Proxmox VDI client,
Yeah.
Ansible, and LTSP.
Yes. You know it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with the Proxmox VDI client.
Sure.
What makes that one so special?
Well, it's kind of like a simplified control panel for students. It helps them to manage their virtual desktops more easily.
Gotcha.
And to make sure that they only see and interact with their own resources,
So no accidental clicks leading to system-wide chaos.
Exactly, yeah. No accidental system-wide chaos.
Okay. I can definitely see the value in that.
Yes.
What about Ansible? That name rings a bell, but I kind of need a refresher on what it does.
Sure. So Ansible is, think of it as like your automation superhero.
Okay.
It uses playbooks, which are basically sets of instructions, to automate tasks like deploying VMs and managing permissions.
Right.
So it takes care of all the heavy lifting behind the scenes.
So instead of manually configuring each VM, I can basically just tell Ansible what to do.
Yes.
And it just handles it.
Yeah, pretty much.
That sounds incredibly efficient.
It is.
Okay, and then there's LTSP, the Linux Terminal Server Project.
Right.
Now, it allows students to connect to their virtual desktops using thin clients, right?
Right.
Which are basically lightweight computers with, like, minimal processing power.
Right. So they rely on the server to do most of the work.
Yeah, okay.
Which means they're cheaper and easier to maintain.
Right, right. And this is a really good option for schools with tight budgets, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's particularly attractive for schools working with tight budgets.
Okay, great. This is all starting to sound like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
But let's face it, no system is perfect.
Right.
What are some of the challenges we might run into with a Proxmox VDI setup like this?
Well, one challenge you'll face is just managing all those virtual machines once they're up and running.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about hundreds of desktops, each consuming resources.
Exactly.
That sounds like a potential resource hog if it's not managed properly.
It could be.
What's the best way to tackle that?
Well, guides suggest implementing scripts that monitor user activity.
Okay.
And they automatically shut down any idle VMs.
So it's like a virtual janitor, keeping things tidy and efficient.
Exactly.
If a student forgets to log out, their VM won't just sit there using valuable resources.
Right.
It'll automatically power down, freeing up those resources for other people to use.
Exactly.
So it's like having a built-in energy-saving feature for your virtual environment.
Yeah, think of it that way.
Clever.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the initial creation of all those student VMs? Even with automation, that sounds like a big undertaking.
It is, yeah. Even with automation, it's a big undertaking.
Yeah. 600 virtual machines, even with a template. That sounds like a lot to wrangle.
Yeah.
What are some strategies for making that process as smooth as possible?
Well, the key is thorough planning and preparation.
Okay.
So you use tools like Terraform or Ansible
Right.
to define all the configurations for your VMs up front.
Okay.
So that includes resource allocation, software installations, network settings.
So it's like creating a blueprint for each virtual desktop.
Exactly.
Oh.
And remember, Proxmox has this thriving community and extensive documentation. So, don't be afraid to tap into those resources. If you run into any snags during setup or, if you encounter any unexpected challenges.
It's like having a virtual help desk standing by, ready to answer your questions.
Exactly.
That's reassuring. Okay, so in this first part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I think we've covered a lot of ground. We've laid the groundwork for a pretty powerful and flexible Proxmox VDI system for a school of 600 students.
I think so, yeah. We've explored the essential components, from hardware and storage
Right.
to automation and security.
Yep.
And we've touched on some of the challenges
Right.
and how to overcome them.
For sure.
But this is just the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
In our next segment, we're going to delve even deeper into the nuances of Proxmox VDI.
No, I'm excited.
We'll be exploring topics like resource allocation, user authentication, and even some of the ethical considerations that come with a virtualized learning environment.
Okay. Sounds fascinating.
So tuned.
Yeah, we'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back to our Proxmox VDI adventure. Last time, we laid the foundation, like the blueprint, for a school-wide virtual desktop system.
Right.
Now we're going to fine-tune it, right?
Okay.
We're getting into the details, the nitty-gritty
Yes, the detail.
that can make or break this project.
Absolutely. It's not just about having the right hardware and software, right?
Right.
It's about optimizing everything
Right.
to create that seamless, efficient
Yeah.
learning environment for those 600 students.
Yeah, exactly. So where do we start? What are some of those crucial details we need to pay attention to?
Well, I think one of the first things we need to consider is resource allocation.
Okay.
Remember, each virtual desktop, it's like a mini computer, right?
Right.
It needs processing power, memory, storage space.
Like dividing up a virtual pie
Exactly.
among 600 hungry students.
You got it.
We want to make sure everybody gets enough
Right.
to function properly. Nobody's feeling starved.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. The guide recommends setting limits for each virtual machine. So you might start by allocating 2 CPU cores,
Okay.
8 gigabytes of RAM,
Okay.
and 100 gigabytes of storage
Right.
per student.
Okay. That sounds like a reasonable starting point.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be a bit restrictive for, students running those more demanding applications?
Oh, that's true.
Like video editing or 3D modeling?
You're right. You're right. But luckily, Proxmox, it offers flexibility. You can easily adjust those resource limits on a per VM basis.
So if a student needs more power for a specific project,
Yeah, you can just bump it up.
I can just bump up their CPU cores
Yeah.
or RAM?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Without affecting other users.
So it's like having a virtual pantry
I like it.
where students can grab extra ingredients
Yeah,
if they need to cook up something special.
exactly.
But I'm also thinking about the storage side of things.
Uh-huh.
We mentioned Ceph earlier,
Right.
but I'm curious to understand why it's so well suited for this kind of setup.
Well, Ceph is designed for scalability and reliability,
Okay.
which is perfect for this VDI environment where you have hundreds of VMs
Yep.
all constantly accessing
Right.
and storing data.
But what makes it so reliable? I mean, storage failures happen. How does Ceph protect against data loss?
Well, Ceph is really clever. It distributes data
Okay.
across multiple storage devices.
Oh, okay.
So if one drive fails, you don't lose any data
Gotcha.
because it's replicated on other drives.
Oh, so it's like having multiple backup copies.
Exactly, yeah.
But-
Think of it like having multiple backup copies of your important files.
All right. That's reassuring, especially when we're talking about, student work and data.
Right, yeah.
Speaking of security, we talked about how Proxmox lets us lock down virtual desktops.
Uh-huh.
But how do we ensure that only authorized students can access those desktops in the first place?
Well, the guide recommends integrating Proxmox with LDAP.
Okay, LDAP. That sounds familiar. But give me a quick reminder. What is that?
Yeah.
And how does it help with authentication?
Well, think of LDAP as a central directory
Okay.
where you store all your user information.
Okay.
So usernames, passwords, group memberships.
So it's like a virtual phone book for the school.
Exactly, yeah. A virtual phone book.
So instead of having separate logins for every system,
Right.
students can use their LDAP credentials to access everything.
They can, yeah.
Right.
The virtual desktops, the school network, other
That
resources.
sounds way more efficient.
It is. It simplifies things for everyone.
Right.
Students only need to remember one set of credentials.
Right.
And IT admins, they can manage all those accounts
Right.
from a single location.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So we've got our virtual desktops locked down.
Uh-huh.
We have a secure way to verify who's logging in.
Right.
But once everything's up and running, how do we keep tabs on, like, hundreds of virtual machines?
Well, don't worry. Proxmox provides this really powerful web interface.
It gives you like a bird's eye view of your entire VDI environment.
Okay.
So you can monitor resource usage, track performance, manage snapshots, lots more.
So it's like a virtual control tower
Exactly.
for your entire VDI system.
Yes, exactly.
That's pretty impressive. But what about when things go wrong? Systems crash, disasters happen. How do we protect all that valuable student data?
Right. Well, that's where a solid backup and disaster recovery plan comes in.
Okay.
Proxmox offers several options for backing up those virtual machines,
Okay.
including snapshots, backups to external storage,
Right.
and even replication to a remote site.
Wow. So it's like having multiple layers of protection.
Yeah, just in case.
Just in case the worst happens.
Exactly. And by implementing, a comprehensive backup strategy,
Right.
you can minimize downtime
Okay.
and make sure that student data is protected no matter what.
Okay.
You-
That peace of mind is invaluable.
It is. But even with the best technology and the best safeguards, sometimes you need a helping hand, right?
True.
What about technical support for a Proxmox VDI setup?
Well, that's where the Proxmox community really shines.
Okay.
It's a large and active community
Right.
of users and developers
Yeah.
who are really passionate about Proxmox.
Okay.
And they're always willing to help.
Awesome.
So there are forums, mailing lists, even dedicated support channels.
So it's like having a virtual team of Proxmox experts on call,
Exactly.
ready to answer my questions, troubleshoot any issues.
Exactly. And because Proxmox is open source,
Right.
there's just a wealth of information and resources available online. Blog posts, tutorials, detailed documentation.
So you're never really alone when you're working with Proxmox.
Never truly alone. You've got that community.
Awesome. I'm really starting to appreciate the power of the open source community.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's like a built-in support system
Yeah.
for your whole project.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this segment,
Uh-huh.
I want to shift gears a bit. Talk about something that goes beyond just the technical aspects of VDI.
Okay.
What about the ethical considerations of having, students' learning environments entirely virtualized?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
And it's something that we should always be mindful of as we, embrace new technologies in education.
Right.
I think a key consideration is making sure that all students have equal access
Right.
to the necessary hardware and internet connectivity
Yeah.
to fully participate in a VDI environment.
Right. Because a virtual desktop is only as good as the device and internet connection it's accessed from.
Exactly.
Yeah. We don't want to leave anyone behind.
Absolutely. And it's not just about access, it's also about data privacy and security.
Right.
We're talking about student data,
Right.
which is incredibly sensitive.
For sure.
We need to make sure that that data is protected,
Right.
from unauthorized access, breaches, misuse.
It's like building a virtual fortress around that data,
You got it.
making sure it's safe and secure.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking about, like, the social and emotional aspects of, virtualized learning.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that students still feel connected
Right.
to their classmates and teachers,
Uh-huh.
even when they're interacting in this virtual space?
That's crucial. It's important to remember that technology should enhance human interaction,
Right.
not replace it.
Right.
So we need to design these VDI environments
Okay.
that encourage collaboration, communication, a sense of community.
It's not just about replicating the physical classroom in the virtual space.
No.
It's about creating a virtual environment
Yes.
that fosters those same connections,
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
interactions that are so important for learning and growing.
Exactly. And as we move towards this more virtualized future
Right.
in education, we need to keep these ethical considerations at the forefront of our mind.
Okay. I think we've covered a lot of ground in this segment.
I think so too.
From the technical nuances of resource allocation, security,
Mm-hmm.
to the broader ethical implications of VDI in education.
Yeah,
It's been a fascinating journey.
it has.
I think we've gained some valuable insights
Yeah,
that will help anyone embarking on a Proxmox VDI project.
absolutely.
But the journey's not over yet.
No, it's not.
In our final segment, we'll wrap up our deep dive
Yes.
with some key takeaways
Yeah.
and a thought-provoking discussion about the future of Proxmox VDI in education.
Looking forward to it.
So stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. We've been on quite a journey, haven't we?
We have.
Through the ins and outs of Proxmox VDI.
Yeah. From the technical bits to the ethical ones.
Yeah. And now it's time to, land this spaceship
Yeah, right.
and unpack everything we've learned.
I like that analogy.
Right. So, for anyone who maybe missed the first couple of parts,
Yeah.
let's quickly recap what VDI is all about. So VDI stands for Virtual Desktop Infrastructure. And it basically means giving every student their own virtual computer.
Right.
Which they can access from anywhere as long as they've got that internet connection.
Right, exactly. And we talked about how Proxmox VE is such a great choice for setting this up. It's open source.
Right.
Which is, good for budgets.
Yeah.
And it can handle so many virtual machines.
Yeah, tons of them, really. It's really built for this kind of scale.
It is.
We also talked about, the essential pieces you need to make this whole thing work, like those powerful servers.
Right.
And a robust storage solution, something like Ceph.
Which distributes data across multiple devices, remember?
Yeah, so that if OneDrive kicks the bucket, you don't lose everything.
Exactly.
And of course, automation was a big theme, right?
Huge.
Using Proxmox's API and tools like, Python or Terraform,
Right.
we can automate the creation of those 600 virtual machines.
Yeah. No more manual clicking for hours and hours.
Oh, yeah, big time saver for those IT teams.
Absolutely.
And we can't forget about load balancing.
Oh, yeah. Super important.
To make sure that no single server gets totally overloaded.
Right.
Proxmox has those built-in features, plus there are tools like aproxy to help with that.
Yeah. They all work together to keep things running smoothly.
Like a well-oiled machine. And remember, we talked about how students actually access their virtual desktops?
Oh, yeah.
Apache Guacamole came up as a really user-friendly option.
Right. It's browser-based.
Yeah, so students can use Chromebooks, tablets, even their phones.
Pretty much anything with a web browser.
I know, it's pretty amazing. Of course, security is super important.
Of course, yeah.
Proxmox has that strong permission system.
Right.
So each virtual desktop is like its own little fortress.
Exactly. And students can only access what they're supposed to.
Right. And we also talked about some alternatives to Proxmox, like Ezard VDI, which is known for being super user-friendly.
It is, yeah. Especially if a school doesn't have a huge IT team.
Right, right. And then we got into all these extra tools, like the Proxmox VDI client, Ansible for automation, and LTSP for using those thin clients.
Yep. All those tools can make a big difference.
They really can. And we talked about the challenges, too, like resource allocation, making sure each student gets enough, backing up data, disaster recovery plans, all that important stuff.
Right. You got to be prepared for anything.
Exactly. And I love that Proxmox has this awesome community.
It does, yeah. Super helpful.
All these users and developers ready to answer questions and help troubleshoot. It's like having a built-in support system.
It really is. And we also went beyond just the tech stuff, right?
Yeah, we went there.
We talked about the ethical considerations of having these virtual learning environments, like making sure all the students have equal access.
Right.
Making sure that data is protected.
For sure.
Thinking about the social and emotional side of things.
Right. It's not just about the technology, it's about the people, too.
Exactly. So we've covered a lot. And Proxmox VDI, it has so much potential for education.
It does.
It's not just replacing physical computers.
Right.
It's about creating a more dynamic and accessible learning environment.
For every student, yeah.
Exactly.
But I feel like this is just the start of the adventure.
It is, yeah.
So as we wrap up this episode,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with this thought.
Yeah.
We've talked about these individual virtual desktops.
Uh-huh.
But what if we thought bigger?
Oh, I like where you're going with this.
Right.
Yeah.
What about virtual labs?
Yes.
Where students can collaborate on experiments
right.
no matter where they are.
With simulated equipment. Imagine that.
Virtual libraries.
Oh.
Filled with all kinds of interactive resources.
Available 204/7.
Virtual field trips.
Yeah.
To ancient ruins.
Yeah.
Or to the depths of the ocean.
That would be amazing.
I know, right? Proxmox VDI can really unlock these amazing learning experiences.
It can. Experiences that you just couldn't do in a traditional classroom.
Yeah.
So, as you embark on your own Proxmox VDI adventure,
right.
Remember, the possibilities are huge.
They are.
Be creative, think big, and always put the students first.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Proxmox VDI.
It has been fun.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries in education.